get some
I
levels
saw
from
the
you
topics.
guys?
I haven't read the prep sheet. If there's any shitty emailers, they should be on notice.
They should be on notice.
Yeah.
I think there's one, but it's not bad.
There's one that gets into your shit.
It's like Jen hates the EU. It's good. That's
yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. It's a.
I don't think there's any twist the knife emails
it's
this
a
week.
specific reference to a way you said a thing, but we'll get to it when we get to it.
Yeah. You'll get the raw version of my reaction today.
As opposed to the naturally politically sanitized version that we normally get.
I have the memory of a fruit fly, so I will read the emails and then completely forget about them. So sometimes these reactions are new, even though I know they're coming.
Yeah.
So
no, I think that what your natural, milieu is to be unvarnished. That's your brand.
I guess so. I mean, I don't know. I've been asking people who know me well lately, why does everyone always think I'm angry when I'm not? My sister says I sound like a bitch.
Your public persona is anger.
Yes.
Well, because Congress does shitty things all the time. I don't want to be angry all the time. It's one of the things I hate about doing congressional dish
but
lately.
people only hear you when you are like, and I wouldn't say angry. It I think your character, if we're being broadly, I think your character is, like Julia Roberts. Hey, Mister, I will say that. Like it's a kind of like
Aaron Brockovich.
Yeah, it's a kind of like
energy.
Like girl next door. Girl next door wants justice vibes. I would say like, but that has a touch of anger to it. There are anger undertones.
I think it's partly what people bind to you because when you are angry, they feel that they have somebody that is speaking for them.
I mean, like I have the same problem with being a sex object, and like I didn't go into this to be a sex object, but it's one of those things. And it's like, if it brings people joy and they can get off, that's fine.
Yeah.
Speaking of, you look a little wet today. In the hair.
My hair's getting real long, so I put in some product. Also, I'm wearing my deceased grandfather's 1970s Batwing shirt that I think looks awesome. I found it in a closet at our cabin in Wagner, Oklahoma. I look like I'm doing you look like the old zookeepers on Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
I think I look like that guy right now.
Andrew Heaton is a sex object to people who write fan fiction about the charmed suit of armor and bed knobs and broomsticks.
There's at least one.
There's one.
There's one out there.
One. And to you, Denise, thank you for your Patreon.
Thank you for thinking it's Denise and not Bert. Either way, happy either way.
No. It was Denise as of a year and a half ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, other than that, your family. Where are we on the loading bar for the family trip?
Oh, we're having a blast. I mean,
but how long until they aren't here anymore?
Oh, we only have 2 days left. So it's kind of a bummer that
that's when it gets the most trying. And look, I love my family. I love spending time with them. Boy, when you hit past day 5, when you hit past day 5, it's we're all living for the weekend.
I've actually figured out the trick to all of this, and it's just you all need to buy campers. That's it. That's the solution. Because like when I go visit my family in Oklahoma, I bring the camper in every time. They go, "We have a guest room. Just stay in the guest room." And I know if I stay in the guest room, I'm going to have to wake up every single night to tell Mom to turn the TV down because Mom likes to fall asleep watching TV, and then she wakes up.
What's the channel?
Oh, it depends on what she's watching. She'll start watching
scenes
what is
that
softcore pornography older ladies like that's not like Bridgerton. She'll watch like Bridgerton, fall asleep to that, and I'll just come in and be like,
softcore, by the way.
Ashley's
been watching.
Mom's
that.
straight up watching porn and just going to, and then she'll wake up about 4:30, and then she'll high five my dad who's waking up. So Dad will be getting up at 4:30, Mom will be going to bed at 4:30, and I'm like, I'm just going to sleep in the yard in my camper where all my stuff is, and then whenever I need to have some me time, I just go out there and no one bothers me. It's great.
Yeah. I went to bed last night at 8:30 p.m. and it was great. I really needed it because it was just.
Wait, were you doing that to avoid your family, or were you exhausted?
No, I was legit exhausted because I was in LA for a week with the family before, and then over the weekend I had my cousin come up from San Antonio, and it was just like lots of kids, lots of time, and I just wasn't sleeping enough. And so last night I was like, all right, I'm gonna not go night swimming. I'm gonna get the rest I need because I'm working in the morning. So it was a good move.
Right.
But what I recommend people do is get a smaller place to live. So like I only have a 1 bedroom And for the few times that
Clark's
people
not going to
visit-
sleep on a futon. He's better than that. He's going to go get a hotel room.
Yeah, and so that's what I did. Like, they're in a hotel, and I'm saving so much money by paying for the hotel, because if you have a spare bedroom, a lot of times you're paying extra money to have it for 1 week every 3 months. And so we did the math, and like, it's working out in our favor to just put people in hotels when they visit. And it's been great for everyone, because now we have 2 pools, and so the kids have had a little variety.
In pools?
Yeah, well, and so one pool is shady in the morning, one has the shade in the afternoon.
Oh, nice.
One has a bar, one is more quiet. So it's just, we've had a lot of variety in what we can do. Cidercade, where we had your birthday, was a huge hit, mainly with the adults.
Yeah, because they got to play all the fucking awesome video games from like 1980 that you could only play in bowling alleys and can't find anymore.
Yeah, the kids were like, these games are for old people. And we're like, exactly.
Damn right.
Pinball all day.
When I was a little kid, once a year we'd go up to Hayes, Kansas to visit my great aunt and uncle, and they had an Atari, and that was awesome. That was definitely before my time. Super fun. I enjoyed it. I'd be excited to play Atari now. I'd be really, whenever I find out anybody has a Nintendo 64, I get stoked.
Yeah. And some of the old Super Mario games, they had them arcade style.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize that that's where they originated, because I only knew them from Nintendo. So that was kind of a trip to be like, oh my God, it's Super Mario 1, but I have to use a joystick. Like, and it's so much harder with the joystick.
Allegedly, and we'll see whether or not this happens, but it was announced that St. Elmo, which is not far from you, Heaton, just down Congress.
Oh, the brewery.
That district, going in there is by far my favorite barcade of all time, which is a regional chain in Ohio called 16-Bit Bar. That's just a good bar, hipster bar, so similar to Cidercade, except they'll actually serve beer as opposed to their proprietary cider. And it's all free play.
It's so nice.
So like, you just, as long as you're drinking, you can, or paying something, right? You just buy whatever. Then you can just play everything but the pinball, because I think pinball is harder to do on free play than arcade games, which are like built in.
8-year-old fantasies have finally come to fruition. I have touched a girl, and there are establishments that I can just go into and play unlimited games on.
Yeah.
Good job.
And maybe one day in your future, you could do both in the same day.
I'm not even going to dare to dream that high.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Jen Briney.
And I'm Andrew Heaton.
And I remembered how to do the intro, because we're not wrong. On this edition of the program, we're going to talk about cheap fakes that are bedeviling the Biden 2024 campaign, and a story that could only happen on We're Not Wrong. It involves SUVs and Edinburgh, Scotland. Two great tastes that taste great together.
Like gums and nuts.
Oh my good Lord. Finally, it all happens here on We're Not Wrong, as well as your emails. So real quick, before we go any further, let's just do a real quick update, because we are moving into the time frame. We are going to be at the conventions. Well, for sure, we will all be at the Republican convention. We are scouting around for dates, but almost assuredly our live show will be either the day before or the day after. We are figuring that out now. The Chicago live show will happen, and it will happen the day before the Chicago convention. Whether or not I will be there is up to my unborn daughter on whether or not she wants to cooperate.
Just pushing everybody around. We lost our disco room here in Justin's house, our karaoke room. She's not even born yet. She's already ruining my life. Preemptively resent your daughter.
But I will say that a guest for whom many in this audience will know and has never appeared on the podcast, regardless of whether or not I am on the show in Chicago, will be on the show. So a surprise mystery guest. It will either be a 4-person panel or a 3-person panel.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yay.
Definitely confirmed. So we will keep that surprise a little closer to showtime. But that will be the case.
That's exciting.
So there's that. And then, we all got together in person. This is the first time we've done a show in person. But on Friday, we said goodbye, farewell to my karaoke room, just adjacent to our shooting studio here in my house. And bittersweet.
I know.
On the upshot though, on Sunday I got invited to do private karaoke at the Hilo over by Lamar Draft House.
Yep.
I had no idea they have private karaoke rooms at the Hilo. They do, and they're $25 an hour. So anytime we want to do karaoke, we can just go over there. I'm still going to resent your daughter, but this is an available option to us.
They have
where we
private
sneak
karaoke
away
rooms?
from her.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know, right? It's because for folks that have no idea what we're talking about, there's the Alamo Draft House Theater. It's a chain where you can eat and watch movies.
It is the flagship
Yeah.
Alamo Draft House, which may or may not be sold to Sony Pictures as of now.
It's where we sold out the first Austin
It
Win
is.
Out
It's
Loud.
where we
We
perform.
did, yeah.
And so built into this building is the Hilo, which is a nice stage-oriented bar. I've danced there several times because they do swing dancing once a week, or they used to.
It is a great place to catch a drink either before or
Yes,
after a
so
movie.
it's a really, really good establishment.
Full bar. Yeah.
There's a staircase at the back, and you go up it, and there are 6 themed private karaoke rooms. There's like a futuristic one, a Roman one. I had no idea. Again, $25 an hour. I would just
That's reasonable.
I would do this with like 2 people.
And you get drink service?
Yeah.
Damn.
How many people fit in the room? How big are they?
I'd say you could easily put in 6 to 8 in the room we were in.
Okay.
They're probably large. I'm guessing the rooms vary in size too.
Yeah, usually they do. That sounds fun. There's also Egos.
Egos is fantastic.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
do
but that's like
karaoke every day.
that's like public karaoke.
Yeah,
That's not private.
Something of a
It's not, but sometimes there's 0 cars in the parking lot where I feel like it probably is private-ish because there's no one in it.
yeah. Egos. I've been to Egos several times. I like Egos a lot. It's a great establishment. There is definitely a table of locals who live there, who are there every day. They're great. I like them. They're good singers, but also they dominate the lineup. So when you go to Egos, you pretty much have to get there at 8, and maybe you'll get 2 songs in. If you get there at 9, you're going to have to wait at least an hour and a half. I've had I think with those kind of things, there ought to be like a queuing system where you're like, hey, I got to leave in 30 minutes. Can I just give you $30 or something? But like sometimes they're okay with
Usually
that.
That's called bribery.
Right.
Yeah.
Or tipping, however we want to phrase this.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're okay with it. Sometimes they're offended because you, like the guild that I joined to run a karaoke. No member of the karaoke guild would ever accept money. So anyway, the traffic is high and you may not get a lot of time. Whereas if you rent a private room.
Yeah, it's so much better.
One time we did that, there was an emo night somewhere downtown. I forget the name of the bar, but our friend Carson, who is the frontman for the Callous Dowboys band, currently touring Europe, by the way, just played the Download Festival. Was very excited for them. But he had to perform because he was performing at their venue out back. And so we wanted to do a song, and they just had stated bribery policy.
Nice.
Of just like, it is $25 if you want to be the next song.
Yeah.
That's
so-
amazing. You make
yeah.
so much money that way.
It makes total sense. I'm friends with some karaoke guys in Edinburgh, and they are offended by this. And I'm like, but it actually makes sense. Like if you're leaving in 20 minutes and you haven't been able to sing yet, and you're like, can I
How
just
has
give
this
you?
not been an orphanage episode? The market philosophies of karaoke.
That does
guys.
sound like a really good. We did one on tipping that was really interesting on like whether tipping's good or bad, how we ought to be doing
back on
tipping.
the news. Back in the news, by the way, is Trump is looking to make no taxes on tips a campaign issue.
Interesting.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I mean, like, I'm going to defer to the prolonged waitress among us, but it seems to me that the taxes on tipping, like you're getting it in cash, and so basically you wind
Well,
up
these days.
A lot of times you're not anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because like when I was a waiter, you were getting paid mostly in cash for the tips, which you
Yes.
just pocketed.
Yes.
They did tax you on the salary, but that was pretty much just to ensure you were paying taxes. So the salary just wound up being taxes, and all of your income came from tipping.
Well, we had to claim our tips, but we'd be like, I made $5
$11.
today.
Right, yeah.
It was so slow.
yeah.
So we were lying.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess I'd have to think about that some more.
It was in Nevada where that would be a bigger issue. because that is a service economy.
What is the
through and through?
How much federal taxation is there on tips? I wouldn't think it's that high, is it? I mean, I guess it's income, so it would just qualify
because
as
you're allowed to pay servers less. The idea is that you are that you are making more money on tips, and therefore you should make up your federal tax burden and your state tax burden based on the tips. Yeah, that come in. But
now we have to work on the definition of tips, because if you really think about it, I work on tips. Because I'm putting out a product and people pay me voluntarily. It's kind of the same
No tax
deal.
on Patreon. Now you have
that
my
would
vote.
be great. With
Yeah.
automatic
No
vote.
tax on Patreon. Now you have my vote.
I think as with many things, the big problem with tipping is we're talking about two different phenomenon, and they get conflated as the same thing. So tipping can either mean the management has outsourced your salary to the customer, and in which case, like in a waiter scenario, look, I make my money through this. Back when I was a tour guide, like this is how I make my money. You, the consumer, get to determine how much my labor was worth, and what is hopefully going to be a very efficient system, but I think it really doesn't work out that way. And then the other one is above and beyond. There's no obligation or expectation that I'm going to give you a tip, but you did so well that I'm going to give you extra money. And I think these two are often conflated. Like, so when I go get coffee, if I know that the people there have a full-time salary, I'm not the one paying their salary through tips. So if I tip them, it's because they're going above and beyond. But then I don't think it should be expected. Whereas if I'm going to a restaurant and there's a waiter and waitress and that's how they make their money, then I absolutely should be tipping unless they do something horrendous.
I just don't know how you put that in legal language to have any kind of differentiation, because I think
service jobs. I mean,
I'm making more of a cultural delineation of. I wish that there were different terms for this, of like bonus and I don't know what the words would even be.
But like voluntary payment, like what I do, the payment is voluntary, but it's not a bonus for me. If nobody tips me, I'd be broke.
We're doing something different. I would make a tertiary category. The three of us are busking. We're busking for a living.
I'm with Jen here. No, we are all now a pro-Trump podcast. If he puts forward no taxes on tips, and the Patreon lobby is now going to be right in that dude's ear saying influencer rights. We need to make sure that we build out our influencer middle class. No tax on Patreon.
Yeah. He scores automatic points. No, I view myself as a busker, which is different. Like when I'm a waiter, I'm doing a thing for you, and you're in charge of my salary. Buskers, I'm just doing a thing, and then at the end passing a hat around going like, wouldn't it be great if you paid me for this thing I've already done? Like, we're just busking at an industrial level.
It sounds exactly the same to me.
Okay.
So
yeah, I do think that the proliferation of the square readers and all the screen prompts, like just the ability to take more and more credit cards, has drastically overexpanded the definition of people who are culturally expectant of tips, or we are faced in situations where it's like, hey, just a little something extra right there. To which I
just going to ask you a question.
Yeah,
I fucking hate that.
For this, I would offer the following, and businesses should also adjust for this. If your service can be made faster, quicker, or better by way of a tip, then you should offer the ability for people to have a tip. But if it's coffee or something where you're literally just asking for somebody to turn around, grab a thing.
The entry at Cidercade wanted a tip yesterday.
Then you are a necessary human barrier to a turnstile to make sure people don't jump over it. I don't need to tip you.
Yeah.
Like that is a different story. If you are making me a sandwich, you're making me, if I do a complicated coffee order and I need 17 different things and it's hard to get that right, then you want to know what? You throw them an extra buck. And in general, I do like giving service workers a little extra money now because nobody wants to do the job. And I would like for these institutions to stay open.
Yeah,
I think all good points. I don't like our tipping culture over here. I think if we're making a good faith argument, the idea behind it is that you, the consumer, are the manager in terms of salary, but that only works if you actually do it. Like I've maybe once a year I will give less than 20%, and it's usually 10%, and that's if I'm enraged.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I've ever not tipped somebody for a job, and then the system's not actually working then. So it just ends up becoming this kind of weird automatic thing that you're doing. I will jump the gun a little bit. I prefer the way the system works in Scotland.
Terrible.
Where
you're a communist.
Yeah. You just it's built into the salary, and then like you basically you give some pocket change.
Trust restaurant managers and the government, two people who are famously great at money.
As a consumer, I like the experience more.
Exactly, of impressing the working class.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's my MO, isn't it?
This is how the bourgeoisie.
I'm the one always trying to bring in immigrants to lower prices on grapes or something.
Tipping is the greatest mutual aid system that Western society has ever devised. American tipping. It is great. We give money to each other. We make each other smile. We bind each other. Brothers and sisters, we unite against the ruling class. And it is those that are both bad at math and want to have a simpler process because they don't want to deal with the common issues of humanity that want to take it away from us.
So the problem is I should feel more free to not tip if somebody sucks. That's the issue, right?
If you want to.
Yeah, I can't. I'm spineless and I'm really affected by cultural norms.
You have larger problems than tipping. Why are you putting this on
We all
tipping?
agree on that.
Let's talk about cheap fakes. The White House responded to critics who have said that President Joe Biden is mentally impaired and physically frail. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre accused some videos of Biden to be modified in a process called cheap faking. These videos show Biden appearing unresponsive or wandering were described as being manipulated to mislead viewers. Cheap fakes, not deep fakes, cheap fakes, involves minimal editing techniques such as slowing down or cropping videos, unlike deepfakes, which use AI. Examples that you might have seen go viral are Biden allegedly wandering off during a G7 summit, appearing to sit in a quote-unquote invisible chair during a D-Day anniversary event. You might have seen that one as Joe Biden allegedly pooping himself. As well as Joe Biden freezing during a Juneteenth celebration when everybody else was dancing.
Wait, is it possible that Mitch McConnell's brain-melting moment was just a supercut of him pausing? Like it was actually a 40-minute speech, but they just took the pauses together?
Critics claim these videos misrepresent Biden's actions. Jen, are cheap fakes unfair, and should they be regulated?
Regulated? No. They're definitely unfair, but I think what we're seeing is that people are figuring out how to debunk them, which is give people the full video, watch it for yourself. It's not that hard to do. It's working itself out. This is where, like, when people talk about over regulation, like any problem needs a regulation. Not every problem needs a regulation. And when it comes to this Biden
Jen,
stuff,
I love you. Please continue talking.
yeah, I don't. Also, like, how would you regulate this? Oh, you're not allowed to take a video and cut it? Well, there goes congressional dish.
We would put a totally objective, independent government service that is in no way affected by who's appointing it from the president at the time in charge of rooting these things out. And they would go absolutely 100% hard on everybody.
You could have 51 intelligence experts say that it's Russian disinformation when they pulled off social media. That seemed to work pretty good last time.
Yeah. And that's one of those where it actually did work. Like the bullshit worked because then you read the fine print and it was like, these are not actually experts at all. And yeah, it was.
And they are using a sophisticated intelligence analyst system called guessing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you need the people that are going to read the fine print and who actually give a shit. The thing is that, like, these cheap fakes, when it comes to Biden, they're working on people because you can't pretend that he's not a doddering old man. So it's like, even if these examples aren't there, the other ones were real. And so just taking this politically, looking at the Biden administration making a big deal about, oh, someone edited a video. It's like, that's not the play here. The play is to replace the old man because there is enough actual evidence
that's
that
the problem.
He's a doddering old man.
He needs to get reelected.
Well,
that's your problem.
Telling us,
do your thing, but he gets reelected.
But the whole play
and
of,
then
like,
you'll be totally fine.
Like the whole idea of America, you're wrong. He's not old.
Exactly.
Like,
perfect. Cut, print.
That's what they're trying to do here by trying to make the story like, oh, these dishonest brokers on the internet are telling you that he's not old or he's old when he's not.
Back in the day when it was just 5 gatekeepers, all of whom were friends with Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And there were no issues.
They might deep fake him doing a jig up there. Like, I don't know.
When I was a kid, we had a crippled president and nobody knew about it.
Yeah, the problem is not the cheap fakes. The problem is that Biden is as old as he looks. And even if there are disingenuous videos, the problem remains that he's old and America has noticed. So that's...
In an election year.
Disingenuous
bad faith videos.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I don't even know how you would regulate this. So it's.
I mean, I think the way that Heaton said would probably be the most likely thing is that you have some sort of bipartisan board on
a truth panel.
Yeah,
A truth panel. It's never been
that's catchy.
It's never been abused by any other government in human history. I'm sure that we would have a perfectly good time with it. I like that we've got a term for this because this is a thing. And by the way, it's not new. It's not remotely new. So cheap fakes is this new term?
Cheap fakes is the term that was used on first reference without an explanation in a Washington Post article defending Joe Biden with these specific examples.
Well,
Then a softball question was given to Corinne Jean-Pierre the next day, it was the next week, because there were more of these kind of videos that went viral, specifically the one of him appearing to freeze on stage at the end of an LA fundraiser and being led off stage by Barack Obama. And then a softball question goes to Corinne Jean-Pierre. She says, yes, cheap fakes. You guys have said cheap fakes, and we think cheap fakes are cheap fakey, and they should stop cheap faking.
We just heard about the Washington Post yesterday. We had no prior connections to it.
And so now it has become the term of art.
Well, and just for the record, like with that video with Barack Obama, I watched the full thing, and both Biden and Obama stopped to look at whatever the hell Biden was looking at and just kind of like point and wave. So I do think it was a disingenuous edit to just show Biden because both of them were looking at whatever the hell he was looking at. That said, though, if you're focused on Biden, even next to Barack Obama, he's walking real stiff because he's 82 years old. It doesn't look great even in the full video. But
so I want to throw a spanner in the works a little bit. So first, cheap fakes are very old. Like this goes back to like you remember when
older than Joe Biden,
George H.W. Bush got in trouble for going to a grocery store and this is all before my time, but as I recall, like what was actually happening was he was going to a grocery store. There was new scanning equipment, and he was going like, "This is interesting. How does this? Is this laser based?" But like it got cut in such a way that like old Kenny Bunkport fucking Bush doesn't know how much milk costs because he's rich. That's how it came off. So and this happens to everybody. Like in 2016, there was somebody asked Hillary Clinton some question, and she in a very earnest attempt to be humorous and joyful and loose, is so easily available to her. She like bobbled her head as if that's a crazy question, and that was taken out of context as if like she has a neurological problem. It happens all the fucking time. So it's an old concept.
Some would say as old as video.
Yeah. We're like Covington, like in 2018?
Yeah.
Where there's some kid in a red hat and a guy in a headdress comes up and he is like smirking and everybody's like, that kid should be given the death penalty. That child is a future child, like school shooter. They should kick him out of school. And then like my friend Robbie Suave just watched the fucking video and it's like he's just standing there and the guy comes up to him and then he's like telling people not to do anything. Like it happens all the time. Here's where I'm going to throw the spanner in the works. Please correct me if I'm wrong here.
Sure.
We all live in this reality. Joe Biden is a doddering old fool. Having taken a internal analysis of my own bearings here, I've only seen Joe Biden, me personally, I've only seen Joe Biden speak maybe 3 times in the last 2 years. The State of the Union address, a video where he talked about how shrinkflation is happening, where he was slurring his words. And like every once in a while, I'll see him like address a crowd and just kind of like pan over and, oh, don't jump, we love you, or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you add up all the screen time that I've seen of Joe Biden over the last 2 years, for me personally, it's probably less than 15 minutes. Or like outside of the State of the Union address, it's probably less than 4 minutes. So most of my worldview right now, when we talk about Biden being this old doddering fool, is just everybody saying it and me going, I guess it's true. Are you all paying more attention to this? Like this is something where you're firsthand going, yes, he is doddering?
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. I've been watching Congress before I even started my show, and this is a different man.
Okay.
This is a very different version of Joe Biden to the point that I am concerned about it because the ego still seems to be intact.
Yeah, it's the last to go, that and bowel control.
Yeah. So like his ego's still there, but his comprehension of the facts, I do doubt. And we're talking about war and peace issues. I do not trust this version of Joe Biden with this much power, and because he is a very different version of the man that used to be there. Even just during the W. Bush years, he was.
So I'm doing debate prep because we got the big debate next week.
Oh, is that next week? Yeah.
I'm watching.
Oh, wow.
I'm watching
Oh,
all
that's
these
next
old.
week?
I'm watching all these old Biden debates. He's noticeably slower than he was in 2020.
Yeah.
Like, watch the 2020 debates, and he's a lot faster. He's a lot more put together.
Or is he percolating before he reaches the proper boil that we want in a president?
I mean, maybe, who knows what kind of flowers for Algernon shit they got in there, but like, they might shoot him up, and he'll be, doing backflips onto the stage and whatever. But
you can do anything in 300 milligrams of Adderall.
Like the dude who debated Paul Ryan in 2012, he don't live here anymore.
Yeah,
he's gone. Like that guy, the guy that was in the Senate, the guy that was slamming his fist on the lectern in the Senate, talking about a crime bill that should have put his son away for like 40 years based on the literal interpretation. Like, that dude is gone. He was here. He doesn't live here anymore.
And it's sad. And it's like, I say a lot of stuff. It sounds like I'm making fun of him. I think it's a sad thing, but it's a part of life. But the question is, do we want this person to be the most powerful person in the world? And that's why I'm so like callous about it, because it's unpatriotic to see a man. Like, it's one thing for Joe Biden to not want to admit his own, deterioration.
Frailties.
Yeah. But the people around him who are telling us with some good reason that Trump is a real threat to our country, that are then leaving him in that position, like the selfishness of all of that, because they have these positions because this old man.
Priority 1, keep our jobs and influence.
Exactly.
Priority 2, get the party elected. Priority 3, America.
Sort of, yeah. But I also, like, priority 2, this isn't good for the party either. It's good for the individuals that were given those positions of power by this particular man.
There are no Democrats under
it.
86 that can run for office. There's too few people in the party. There's nobody.
Or apparently anybody else, including third parties.
Yeah.
Cornel West, RFK, Jill Stein, Trump, Biden, all 70
Chase
plus.
Oliver's like 40 in the Libertarian Party. But also, I was talking to some Libertarians about this the other day. I think they should have just nominated Ron Paul, because like he's alive and he could just be on the ballot and everybody would be like, I remember that guy. Click. Like, I think Ron Paul not
would
running
vote for Ron Paul.
would get more votes.
70 plus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, he's like 93
but
or
there
something.
is a difference between
whippersnappers.
70 plus and 82 is a 12-year gap, and there's different cognitive levels. Like my husband's grandmother, Grandma Jean, she died in her late 90s, sharp as a tack. She could remember everything. She was always there in conversations. Like, some people don't get dementia. Some people do. And when we're looking at Joe Biden, you can clearly see that he's not the same person. That's a problem. And the Democratic Party and their cynicism of being, America, you're just wrong. He's fine. It's infuriating because he's not fine. And we can see he's not fine, especially those of us who've been watching closely for as many years as we have. So, I'm a little callous to it at this point because I'm angry. I think it's dangerous to have this guy be the nominee, even
other
if
than
he's better
the
than
nuclear
Trump.
arsenal. What can he get wrong?
Yeah. And the economy.
And the economy.
And the border.
And he still thinks we're in the Cold
two
War.
different fronts of possible world war that don't include our biggest geopolitical adversary.
Yeah.
Aside from that, though, what can go wrong?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And $2 trillion in debt, which apparently we are.
Yeah, I'm gonna. There's a lot of blame to share on that one, but yes, we're. Hey, fun fact: the interest on the debt, just the interest on the debt, will exceed the American military budget by the end of this year. I think this summer, in fact, we will be spending more money on interest of the debt than the
It's hitting
military
$1 trillion?
budget.
That doesn't sound right.
It's rapidly. It's outpaced Medicare. We now spend more on interest than Medicare or Medicaid. One of the two. It's getting big up there. It's getting really big.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it's big, but we're now looking at $1 trillion.
I heard this from a source that I
budget, so.
trust in Washington, D.C. It's possible that they were like splitting like Veterans Administration away from actual punching power. They're just talking about punching power. I feel very confident in saying that it is very big and growing. I feel very confident in saying that.
I think that's safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's it.
stupid big because we have stupid debts, and we're in precarious times, and I just don't want Joe Biden to be in charge of it. I need someone who's cognitively there, and I know that people have good reasons for not liking Kamala Harris, but if they made her the nominee, first Black woman president, plenty of people will show up for that. And then we don't get Trump. And at this point...
So, all right, first things first, I as much as I am loath to to say anything kind about politicians in general, let alone the current crop of politicians that are in the White House, Nobody can take Joe Biden off that ballot but Joe Biden. That's it. It is a jury of one. There is no power structure. There is no party structure that can do anything but politely ask him, for which point, if he did not like that suggestion, which I'm going to take a wild guess and say that he won't.
Such a selfish son of a bitch,
You are
that
now
one.
cut out of any further decisions because you will be an apostate to the crown. That this is him. This is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is making this decision. So I don't think that we can say, why don't they? It's him. That's it.
But there has to be, well, you would hope that there would be someone willing in that room to say, Joe, these are the realities here. Everything that you think about Trump is true. Like, I'm in the room, but everything you think about Trump is true. And the patriotic thing to do is to make it the most possible for us to win this election. And that's not. Is anyone saying this to this man? And I don't.
Well, he believes
so.
he's winning, and they believe they're winning.
They're fucking nuts. These reports of them like believing things despite the polls.
Are bad.
And yeah, they're just
Bad polls.
Yeah.
Worked for Trump. Trump said bad polls both times, wound up overperforming his polls. One time he won really close, and one time he lost really close. So they're like, hey, look, now they're saying we're down. Same thing.
On the polls note, I read Josh Barrow's newsletter. I enjoy his political analysis, and he's made the case that Biden actually is the best option available at this time when you look at the polls. So when you look at like Kamala Harris in a one-on-one comparison with Trump, she doesn't do well. That like Biden, for all of his foibles, is still the most compelling centrist Voltron ticket that the Democrats would be able to cobble together.
There was actually, and shocking for SNL, which has taken a lot of lumps for its terrible political comedy, but they did a really, really, really good film sketch about a year and a half ago where it's a horror movie of a bunch of Democrats in a cabin talking about like, oh, Trump's going to run again. Who are we going to run against them? We can't have Biden. And then they go through all of their options in these varying horror scenarios.
One of them goes, what about Beto O'Rourke? And someone just slaps him. Yeah, that's great. That's a really funny
And then
sketch.
eventually they settle back on Biden. And I do think that astutely, that's certainly where we are now. If we were a year ago, last June, and Joe Biden came out to the Rose Garden surrounded by all of the ex-Democratic presidents, including Jimmy Carter out of hospice. And he said, my job is done here. I am ascending to Democratic president heaven, not a real place. It's just, a hotel room. And I'm done. I'm passing it on. I'm going to, I hope we have a very spirited primary system, and I will support whoever the nominee is. It's a different story, but we're not there. We squashed everything, or he squashed everything coming out of it, even screwed the primary process on the way out, which now, as they are bleeding black support, they moved the first vote to Georgia because they wanted Iowa, too white, too old.
South Carolina, right?
South Carolina, sorry. Georgia's the next one. Georgia's the same time as Iowa, sorry. And now the base of Joe Biden's support is old white people who still love the old white guy. But it's him. It's him. Because if you were to pull the ripcord now, it would be chaos. And that's the one thing that you have as an incumbent is a lack of chaos. It will stay
the chaos
the same.
of the
Steady
next Trump
hand,
administration.
not a tremorous hand, a steady hand.
No, but that's what he has on, all these models have debuted, and you can think good or ill of the models that 538 does, or Decision Desk, or The Economist, but they all price in that incumbent presidents usually win. And that is a big factor that affects elections. Incumbent presidents usually win. If you strip that out and you only go by what the polling looks like, it's dark. It's dark right now for Biden, but he doesn't believe the polls.
But what else is, neither do I. I don't necessarily believe the polls in that, Biden's doing better than it seems. But 2016 happened. We were all told that like someone was a lock and the other person won. So I don't believe any of these people that are telling us what we believe. And so I can't really blame the Biden team for believing their own reality. But at the same time, maybe talk to some voters and like talk to the people that voted Biden the first time, people like me. And we'll tell you that we're very uncomfortable with this, and that if you nominated a potato, we'd be more likely to vote for it. And
You might be getting a vegetable either way.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, so real quick, back to the cheap fake thing. Let me underline this for Heaton. A cheap fake, as described by Corinne Jean-Pierre, is every political video that's ever come out. I did on the opening of PX3 point out that Joe Biden ran in 2020 by highlighting the clip of Donald Trump saying that at Charlottesville there were very fine people on both sides. 20 seconds after that, Donald Trump says, I am not talking about the neo-Nazis and white supremacists.
Yeah.
They should be condemned completely. Now, does that dilute the very fine people on both sides thing? Yes. Does that mean that Joe Biden ran a cheap fake? No.
Yes.
It's well, I mean, well, sure. If you want to define this as that, it just means that
Taking things out of weaponizing media by taking things out of context.
yeah, it happens all the time. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. People weaponize stuff all the time that falls dead. The only things that matter, the only narratives that can be shaped are the narratives that the American public want to be shaped. Why do we keep watching video after video of Joe Biden freezing and being doddering and meandering around? Because America believes he's old and they want to confirm their intuition by visual evidence. And so they're going to seek these things out. You can say, well, but look at the angle. He's not really shitting himself or he's sitting in an invisible chair. It's like, yes, but he started sitting in the chair 5 seconds before everybody else. And it was weird enough that his wife had to cover her mouth, presumably to tell him that they shouldn't sit down right now. Like, yes, he did wander off when everybody else was looking at the camera during the G7 thing. Was he going to give thumbs up to a paratrooper? Yeah. But
still weird.
He's still weird. He froze. Everybody else is moving, including a man with a full beard and a dress is like jamming out to the Juneteenth thing. And he's standing there like he can't move, which is really funny because he's the only white guy. But it's also kind of scary because it looks like Grandpa froze. He did it again during his speech yesterday where he just had this brain fart and a bunch of random syllables fell out.
Which has always been a Joe Biden thing. He's always been word vomity, but he could recover better. Like he would say something weird and then he would come back because it was in the middle of some long rant. Like he's not recovering from these moments the way he used to. He's not aware of them the way he used to be and like getting back to his original point. And he was always, people liked Joe Biden. Like he was very socially astute. And so these moments like at the G7 where he's just like, I'm going to go over here and give a weird thumbs up. Like he wouldn't have done that 20 years ago. So
he would have known he's supposed to be the alpha. At the G7, the American president is the alpha. The American president is directing everybody no matter where they are because he's the biggest guy in the room. He's not wandering off so he could give the paratrooper man a thumbs up.
Exactly.
This is what America wants to see because it's what we're afraid of. And I think Democrats are afraid of it. If you look at the polling, the Democrats are afraid of it in the same way that Republicans are. Now, Republicans are gleeful of it because they think that it's going to put someone that they agree with more in the White House.
Mere 83-year-old or whatever the fuck.
78.
78, okay.
Which is another thing, because that's the other thing we're going to get a bunch of it. What about all the times that Trump fucks up? Donald Trump speaks for almost, on average, a minimum of 45 minutes to an hour, and he's doing it in like 100-degree weather. Yeah. So like he fucked up cheap fakes at his speech yesterday. He called them clean fakes. Like, but he's doing it in 90-degree weather, speaking for an hour. If you just compare the words that come out of each of their mouths by week, it's not even close. We watched him speak for 30 minutes where he was getting booed hellaciously in the
Libertarian Lucha
convention.
Libre. Yeah,
exactly. So
it's different.
It's different.
He definitely, in terms of visual presentation, Trump comes off much more vigorous, much more robust, much more youthful. I will say if you read a transcript, like a direct transcript of Donald Trump, he sounds insane. Because he's he has a very specific speaking style that does not lend itself to textual analysis. And if you read it, you're like, that guy lost his mind a long time ago.
Did you see the thing about the sharks?
It's amazing.
No, what?
Oh, it's so good. Should we find it and have Will drop it in?
Yeah, go ahead. This is a thing of Donald Trump talking about boats, electric boats with batteries and sharks.
It is the most rambling shit I've ever heard in my whole life. It is funny how incoherent it is.
because of MIT, my relationship to MIT. Very smart. He goes, I say, what would happen if the boat sank from its weight and you're in the boat and you have this tremendously powerful battery and the battery's now underwater and there's a shark that's approximately 10 yards over there. By the way, a lot of shark attacks lately. Do you notice that? A lot of shark. I watched some guys justifying it today. Well, they weren't really that angry. They bit off the young lady's leg because of the fact that they were not hungry, but they misunderstood who she was. These people are crazy. He said there's no problem with sharks. They just didn't really understand a young woman swimming now really got decimated, and other people too. A lot of shark attacks. So I said, so there's a shark 10 yards away from the boat, 10 yards, or here. Do I get electrocuted? If the boat is sinking, water goes over the battery, the boat is sinking. Do I stay on top of the boat and get electrocuted? Or do I jump over by the shark and not get electrocuted? Because I will tell you, he didn't know the answer. He said, you know, nobody's ever asked me that question. I said, I think it's a good question. I think there's a lot of electric current coming through that water. But you know what I'd do if there was a shark or you get electrocuted? I'll take electrocution every single time. I'm not getting near the shark. So we're going to end that. We're going to end it for boats. We're going to end it for trucks.
So he definitely has those moments, but he's
he's
had them forever.
Okay. Is it meandering and is it ridiculous? Yes. I wouldn't say incoherent. He's talking about electric boats and whether or not if an electric boat was sinking, would it be better to jump in the water because you'd be away from the electrocution? But what if there's a shark there? So would you rather sink with the electric
sounds
boat?
like a really fun bar conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, he sounds shit.
If every animal on the planet were the size of a shoebox, which one would win in a fight? I say honey badger.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing about Donald Trump is he sounded like that years ago as well.
Yes.
So it just
And he also has a long
difference.
history of hating sharks.
Okay.
He has hated sharks.
Loves
for a long
tariffs,
time.
hates sharks.
No,
These are
because
the two
at the end of it is that like I'm not getting in the water. Like I would try to kill the shark.
It's so weird.
Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. This week we will be talking about something that Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom agree on. What is it? And does it immediately make it the best or worst idea on the planet? We will answer that exclusively on Patreon. Again, that is patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. Adopted hometown of Andrew Heaton, Edinburgh, has recently banned fossil fuel advertisements on city property, impacting oil companies, car manufacturers, airlines, cruise ships, and arms manufacturers. This move, led by City Councillor Ben Parker of the Scottish Green Party, follows similar actions by cities like Amsterdam and Sydney, and endorsements from figures like UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Proponents believe such bans can change consumer perceptions akin to historical tobacco bans, while fossil fuel companies are arguing that they are addressing climate change already and banning advertising does nothing. Experts suggest ad bans could reduce consumption and influence public opinion, and so Heaton, as someone who spends the most time in Edinburgh, is banning SUV advertisements, a meaningful shift, or taking money out of city coffers for no good reason.
Okay, so my options are it is a meaningful shift to combat climate change, or it is needlessly depriving the city of revenue. I'm going to create option 3. This will do absolutely nothing whatsoever. It will have no impact at all. It is a do-nothing bill that will get some chatter for the Ben Parker character that you mentioned. And potentially, if you're concerned about signaling, it is the city's council signaling further that it believes in climate change. But in terms of effect, I'm not worried about it. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. I don't think it's really going to help anything either. The main reason that I say that is I've spent about 3 years living in Edinburgh. You can't have very large billboards. They have really strict billboard regulations in Scotland, which is actually quite pretty. You don't see them around. Yeah. You can't have them in Edinburgh within like 150 feet of a park, a forest, a playground, or anything declared scenic or historical. So Edinburgh, you just can't have any billboards in Edinburgh. So that basically leaves bus stops, bus stops that are owned by the council,
Yeah.
that has advertising on them. Do you know where I wouldn't go to advertise SUVs? A place that pedestrians use to get on a fucking bus. That's the worst place. So where these...
Wait, no, I would think that's the best place.
If it's
man, I would like a car.
if it's a really shitty bus system, but it's a pretty good bus system over there. For like,
well, I don't know, but what if they're like, oh, the bus didn't? They used to go by my house, now it doesn't.
I'm thinking that this is not where I would not go to pedestrians in a heavily pedestrian city with limited parking.
But that's up to the car company. You are the city in this situation.
Yeah.
So you are taking a potential advertiser off the ledger.
You're taking a potential advertiser. I think I've lived there 3 years. I can't remember a single time I've ever seen an advertisement for an SUV anywhere in Edinburgh other than on my laptop for some bizarre reason where, you know,
They know you're American.
They knew I was American, so they like you should buy a Ford Robin.
Yeah.
A Ford Robin is Britain's answer to SUVs, or whatever that is, or alternately on television. Neither of which can be regulated by the city council. So I don't think that this was already a thing. I also can't remember arms dealers ever fucking advertising at bus stops.
That was the funniest part.
Yeah, like, oh yes, that's Smith & Wesson was not advertising in Edinburgh, weirdly enough. So
Yeah. Clickclack.eu.
I don't think it's going to advertise anything. And on top of that, even if it were effective, I don't think it would be remotely necessary given the way the system is set up in Scotland. So let's for a moment just all assume climate change is very important and that we want to not have gas-guzzling vehicles. Congratulations. The United Kingdom's already put in very stringent things that take care of that. Do you guys want to guess what the price of gas is here in Austin right now? Like just like ballpark
It's a
figure.
little over $3.
Okay, about $3. Yeah, you can maybe find it $2.94 if you go out to Lampasses. It's about $7 a gallon in Scotland right now.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that it's $7 a gallon is primarily because Scotland and the United Kingdom both put up really big taxes on gas to try to discourage people from driving large vehicles, which I think is the most effective thing you could do. If you really want to discourage people from driving large vehicles, tax gas. And credit to Scotland, they are not using this as a means by which to fund the roads. Those would be contravened goals. You can't have a sin tax and a revenue tax. They're at cross purposes. So they've got that. The United Kingdom also has an excise duty. I don't remember the term. It's like intro excise duty or something like that. But when you purchase a vehicle, you pay more if it's a larger or gas-guzzling vehicle. So it's already, in my opinion, prohibitively expensive to have an SUV anywhere in Scotland. I drive an SUV here in the United States, and I would not purchase an SUV if I were in Scotland because I wouldn't be able to fucking park anywhere in the city of Edinburgh. The parking spaces are too small. The lanes are too tiny, and it would cost $7 per gallon of gas. So all of this is a roundabout way of saying I think that this is ultimately some virtue signaling that the city council embarked in. I don't think it's going to fuck anything up. I don't think it'll help anything.
Can I ask you one advertisement? And I've only been in Edinburgh once, so I would not have a historical sense of this that I might imagine would show up there, and that are vacation ads or airline ads.
And they have
dark
banned,
and cold, so
yeah.
An ad with a big, sunny beach.
Yeah.
Visit Jamaica, something like that.
No, that's a good point because I believe the same law also bans cruise lines and airlines from advertising. The airlines possibly. I think that one is something that they would actually advertise on. I've not
that might be something that would be effective on a bus in Edinburgh in December.
Yes, I think that's fair. I mean, I know enough Scots, a lot of them have seen a globe before. They are aware that it's warmer in Spain or Florida, ideally, because they don't want to have to learn another language even for 3 days. So
I will always say that whenever I'm in Disney World, I hear more UK accents than I do when I am in the UK.
No, they love the British
shit.
have a boner for Florida that I will never fully understand. I think that is a well-met point, Justin, that is at least something that corporations would probably advertise on. But I don't think that they would be, I don't know. I don't think it's going to significantly influence behavior one way or the other. I think it's kind of a nothing burger in terms of the policy.
So you think, all right, so of the two, there's a large 95% this will have nothing to do with whether or not more or less money will come into the city by way of them leasing their advertising space, because you're not really screwing with the clients that would actually use them. And you think a absolute 0% chance that this is going to affect any kind of behavior with the city or the citizens of Edinburgh in terms of being more climate change aware.
You know what? Let's get into some proportionality stuff, because I think that this is a reasonable take on it as well, where what is the proportion of advertising people are seeing in the like 9 billboards in Edinburgh or on bus stops compared to advertising that they're seeing on their phones, which is not regulated by the city, and advertisements that they're seeing on the television? My guess is that the amount of advertisements you're bombarded with on your phone is probably 10 to 1, if not higher. So, no, I don't really think it's going to make a very big difference there. But the other thing that I would bring up, I looked into this.
But what about the seed not planted?
The seed,
when he talks
please.
about, the vacation to Jamaica, you might not have had that idea unless you saw the billboard. And so it's kind of like, I don't think that's something we can necessarily quantify, because maybe one of the reasons that I bought this SUV is because now I'm aware that it exists. Maybe one of the reasons that I picked Jamaica for my next vacation instead of, I don't know, somewhere I could take by train is because I saw this thing and went, oh yeah, that's an option. And then kind of went down that mental rabbit hole while waiting at the bus stop in the rain going, I just want to be warm. Like, it's kind of hard to say that it won't affect actions because of the way advertising does affect actions. It's so subliminal sometimes. It's just planting seeds. And so if there's fewer places for the seeds to appear, I don't see how it doesn't affect at least some actions.
I think you all have convinced me that it is not going to be 0, but I still think it's going to be very low. Like, again, in terms of the amount of images you're bombarded with in terms of advertising, I'm guessing it's like 9 to 1 in terms of what you're seeing on your phone or your television. So, yeah, like if we've got a bunch of seeds in this analogy, you've plucked 2 seeds out of 90, something like that. So possible. I don't know. I mean, some other things here, a lot of the criticisms that the British get, kind of similar to the Americans, is that they are not sufficiently cosmopolitan travelers. They need to see more of the world, that kind of thing. I don't know that I think it's a good thing for Scotland to quit visiting other parts of the world. I think that being part of the international community is positive. And this brings me to my other proportionality point, which is I think that Scotland and the United Kingdom have had a very weird set of priorities in terms of carbon reduction. And I say this twofold. One, Scotland, whenever it talks about being independent, brings up the fact that, well, we've got the North Sea oil. That'll take care of it. We've got the North Sea oil. We'll get all the revenue from the North Sea oil. So you guys, the Scots, are going to continue pumping out oil, but you're going to be a 0 carbon country? How the fuck's that work out, idiots?
Just be a pastier Saudi Arabia with tartan?
Yeah, but and this is part of my problem with the United Kingdom in terms of, and Europe, in terms of its energy policy. Sometimes they actually reduce the energy. A lot of the time what they do is they just outsource it to other countries so they don't have to think about it. So like I don't know, 20, Russia's a great example of this. 20 years ago, the European Union started putting regulations on cement, and cement can be a very nasty business. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have regulations on cement, but you are playing a balance game where if you make them too onerous, you just push all the business to North Africa that doesn't give a fuck. And that happened. So I think that like this is a perfect example. Scotland trying to fund itself through oil revenue while simultaneously saying that it's going to be a carbon neutral country is weird to me. And then the other thing that I would love for British people to sort of internalize is the global emissions that the United Kingdom releases into the world every year is about 1.4% of the whole globe. So let's say that the United Kingdom, Scotland included, is able to completely tighten the belt, and it jacks up prices on oil, it jacks up prices on gas, it outlaws SUVs, it does everything it possibly can. We're talking about a maximum of 1.4 reduction. Now, that's not nothing, but I would posit that for an ingenuitive, innovative people like the Scots, that they would better serve the world by focusing on coming up with new technology they can export to the developing world that will actually get them to reduce their global footprint than tightening the belt on something that's going to be pretty diminishing returns.
Jen?
I mean, so I kind of want to focus more on the strategy of not advertising certain things. Because I think you're right that if we're just focusing on Edinburgh itself, it's probably not going to make much of a difference. But the fact that they're the first to ban fossil fuel advertisements.
They're joining Amsterdam and Sydney, but certainly
and a lot of other
a nascent movement.
Several other British cities. This is just the other capital that they.
But they're getting the ball rolling on an idea that worked with cigarettes. Because when we were young, do you remember the Joe Camel cigarette ads. They
Yep.
were everywhere.
Were those around when we were kids?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We were at the end of like Marlboro and Camel points and stuff like that, but those were the rewards program they put in. They could still do display ads. They could no longer do television ads, and they could no longer do radio ads, but they could do billboards. So you'd see Joe Camel billboards, and they could do advertising in magazines that were specifically directed toward adults.
I remember it being in 17 magazine, the full page Joe Camel, because it was the only magazine that I paid attention to, and like there were giant Joe Camel ads in there. So and now you look at
that would be because in certain areas you could smoke at, I think, younger than 16.
well, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when we could smoke in restaurants, so it's
That's why I moved to Hoboken from Queens.
so that you could smoke in restaurants as
No,
a child.
because I grew up. I had a misspent youth with an alcoholic father, spending a lot of time in bars and smoky bars when I was a child, and so I don't smoke. But I went to Hoboken to go look for an apartment, and they could still smoke inside of bars, and I'm like, fuck yeah.
But yeah, so I look at the beginning. I remember I am old enough to remember when there was a debate in this country about whether or not cigarettes should be allowed to be advertised. And now I look at this younger generation and they don't smoke. They don't think it's cool. They don't do it. It's just they juul, which is a whole.
I was going to say,
it's like kind of the same.
You think that happened because of a advertising ban?
Yeah, I think in part because these images that we were seeing that made smoking itself, like the cigarette with the actual smoke, like that was cool. And then the thing that became cool became the Juuls because they were allowed
vaping.
to advertise it.
Yeah. 'Cause vaping was sold as less harmful than cigarettes.
And they were allowed to advertise that. So I do think that advertising makes a difference in having these.
They were able to advertise, but go ahead. Please.
Thanks. So I do think advertising has an effect on our behavior, and I've seen it with cigarettes. Putting aside that Juuls, they are a different thing. Vaping is a different thing, but cigarettes themselves are no longer cool. And we did see this effort to make it harder for them to advertise. So yes, there's only a couple places right now that are banning fossil fuel advertisements. And it's not just for climate. We also have to remember that fossil fuels are polluting our air and our water and all kinds of things when you burn them, especially in tailpipes and in cruise ships and airplanes. So I do think that if this is the beginning of the momentum, like starts in Amsterdam and Australia and Scotland, then it goes to France maybe, then maybe it goes to Spain and Italy, and then maybe even America. Like if this is a progression of making it obvious that burning fossil fuels is a bad thing, because I think right now there's still too many people that see it as it's fine. Everyone who's into electric cars and public transportation, you're just overreacting. You've bought into the liberal brainworms.
Hell yeah.
If it actually becomes kind of like smoking, where it's like, no, there's actually real health costs to this, and that awareness is raised, maybe this could have a real effect because it's starting at a small place. But if this is a chain reaction like this, I don't know. I'm not entirely against it because it did work with smoking.
So I largely agree with you, Jen. I'm a vociferous free speech proponent. I don't think advertising is the same thing as free speech. I think free speech is about communicating ideas and opinions, and advertising is an operation of commerce. So, for example, not allowing Playboy to advertise nudity on a billboard does not offend my free speech sensibilities, nor does prohibiting advertisements for cigarettes on television or anything like that. I don't have any moral problem with it. I've not done any research on this, but I've heard smart people say that America is the only country that allows advertising of pharmaceuticals on television.
There's one other one. I can't remember what it was, but yeah.
And like
most of the world
if we were to move to ban that, I would want to see the data, but it's not something that I have a moral problem with. It doesn't like hit my electric fence in terms of where my morals are. So I think that there is a role for that, and we're in the realm of commerce where we're looking at levers, systems, what's effective, and always the prospect that it's just been weaponized by other competing car companies and things, which you got to keep your eye out for. So I don't really have a big problem with it morally. I don't even have a big problem with it from a policy perspective. I just think it's fairly ineffective. And I think it's very ineffective compared to any actual financial mechanisms. Like between a gas tax versus banning advertising, I would say the gas tax is going to be so much more salutary in terms of affecting it. The only thing that I will push back a little bit on, again, on a scale of 1 to 10, I care about this at like maybe a 2.
Yeah.
This is just, again, I don't think it's going to cause the slightest ripple at all. So if it happened, I wouldn't be tearing my hair in Edinburgh whatsoever. I do think that you can have situations where countries and individuals can focus on the wrong thing and end up neglecting more effective solutions. So, like in the United Kingdom right now, they've got an energy crisis because it's very cold in the winter. The cost of gas is rising because of everything going on in Ukraine, and so they are put in a position of either people are impoverished, or they freeze to death, or we fire up more coal power plants or something like that. If I were a British lawmaker, I would be doubling down on nuclear power and going, look, this is clean, and it's a way to make it cheap and get everybody taken care of. I would be focusing on a solution like that as opposed to advertising, which I think is just diminishing returns at best compared to the bigger stuff. And then I'd say, like in the United States, like I kind of think recycling does some harm psychologically. And what I mean by that is that I know a lot of people that they recycle and they're like, that's it, I'm an environmentalist, I did my part. And I'm like, well, I don't think recycling really does that much in terms of carbon reduction. So if it kind of lets you off the hook. So I would just say, I think this can be diminishing returns, and it could be something that cities are focused on when they should be focusing on, like getting rid of coal power plants or figuring out ways to tax negative externalities like pollution that gets into people's lungs.
I just don't think that any of this has to exist in a vacuum, because I think if there's less advertisements for, let's say, SUVs, and instead you're seeing an advertisement for an electric car and thinking about that instead, like that can work at the same time that you're focusing on building, infrastructure for cleaner energies. I don't think that it has to be one or the other. And I don't think one hurts the other, especially when it comes to making purchases and vacation decisions. Like, if you are seeing an advertisement for something that looks awesome, that's train distance, maybe you're more likely to take that than an international flight. And definitely with SUVs, like I'm living fairly close to a Rivian dealership. I didn't know what the fuck a Rivian was. I found out that they're electric trucks. Did not know, except for I saw the word Rivian every single day as I was walking around and went, what the hell is that? That's an advertisement. And it worked on me, because if I didn't see that word as often as I did, I never would have Googled it, and I never would have put it kind of on my list for the next car, because they look kind of cool. And I would like to be able to tow stuff the way you do. Yeah. And my little electric car can't do that.
Oh my God, I can't wait until you get a truck.
Well, I mean, if it wasn't spewing fossil fuels everywhere.
Independently, we will get her truck nuts to put on said truck.
For each month, themed.
Truck tits, thank you very much.
Truck tits, yeah. On the front, yeah, nice.
Yeah. I'm a classy lady.
Nipples on the hubcaps.
Yeah. I'm interested by the strategy only because we've seen it work in history with a different harmful product. So
I would, yeah. Hopefully we have emails about this, but I don't know how much your cigarette example is how I remember that process going. But
I mean, do you see cigarette ads, and do you see a lot of young people smoking?
I don't see cigarette ads.
I'd say public smoking bans were probably more effective than the advertisements.
I think they
but
went
you know what? For youth, I'll give you that. For youth,
but but it was the rise of vaping. There was a better product. A better product came along and took up that slack.
Before vaping was a thing, the cigarette smoking rates were going down. They've been going down for decades, way before Juuls were invented.
I understand that, and also you would have to say that the cigarette industry was also forced to advertise against itself as a consortium. They were forced to run advertisements saying that it was harmful, and so maybe that is an element of it. I don't know if anybody I ever knew stopped smoking or didn't smoke because of advertising. I think that the general public understanding of its health impacts and watching, your family members die was probably the advertisement that was the most effective to people.
I just remember very vividly this exact debate about whether or not these products should be advertised. And in that debate is when I learned a lot about the health effects. So I think if we were having a national debate about whether or not fossil fuels should allowed to be advertised, that debate alone would serve as an education tool.
Yeah,
I'm going to say,
I think we would disagree on the general level of education on people's points of view on climate change. And I will make the point that for baseline centrist level Overton window movement toward the goals that you have, doing things like trying to social engineer a working class Scotsman from taking a once in a decade trip to Jamaica is not conductive to that process, in my opinion.
The thing that I'm specifically talking about is the SUV ban. I do think that they're going a little overboard, but not letting traveling be advertised. But I do think having conversations about the harms of fossil fuels, if this is what sparks it, I'm okay with it.
We get to this on the screaming edge, just like what happened if we're going to stay in the UK. What happened today, where climate activists spray painted Stonehenge orange.
Yeah, not helpful.
Like there's also a group in Scotland called the Tire Extinguishers, and they just knife SUV tires, which I do not think it would keep me from buying an SUV, because I already wouldn't buy an SUV in Scotland. But it also, I think, when I see people like painting paintings in a museum and then screaming about climate change, I'm like, no, fuck you guys for a week.
It's not connected in any way. At least slashing the tires is like, oh, I'm trying to stop you from driving this thing. But like destroying the Mona Lisa, I don't understand how that helps.
My assumption is that the best, most realistic place that any green energy advocate or climate change activist can hope to do is get to a point where fossil fuels are part of a balance, or emissions, however you get to them, including using the coal power plants that wind up powering electric cars, is that these are part of a balanced breakfast, that you should be reducing your sugar intake, but understanding that at some point people are going to want sugar on their pancakes, or they're going to want a side bowl of cereal to go along with their eggs. That there is going to be some level of emissions that come along with our process, and what we should be doing is being smarter and more efficient with them, as opposed to looking at a world where they never exist, because I don't think that we're particularly close to that.
We're not, but I think we're also still at a place with a lot of people where they think that this is all nonsense, where they don't look at the effects of fossil fuels. Not like there's so much focus on the changing climate, and I've seen some hurricanes spin up out of fucking nowhere, and it's concerning. I believe all of it is true. But the pollution aspect of burning those fossil fuels on your streets is not talked about nearly enough. The asthma rates, it's so damaging. And so I think that there is a lack of awareness when people think that it's just liberal brainworms when it comes to these fossil fuels. I think we do have a problem with that, and that needs to be discussed more.
My point is hysterics lead to that. And
I agree.
overactive dialogue that stretches into, we need to make sure the dumbs never see anything that might tempt them, is leading to people to say, fuck you, I want to go on vacation. I think the whole thing's bullshit anyway.
I don't think it's like sheltering the dumbs. I think it reminds me.
That's where a lot of this dialogue gets to.
Well, that's not my dialogue, so I can't take credit for that.
This isn't Jen. However, I will say Scotland definitely thinks that way. This is not Jen. Scotland, like, very much is like the government should die. Like, you need the people need to be told what to do. I'm thinking about getting roses in my garden. I'm going to go to the council to ask permission first, because I couldn't possibly get roses without getting permission. So like they're a very and hierarchical, yeah.
And I understand that. I've seen it. I've been around some of the climate people in Europe. Like I don't understand why I think defacing art is going to help this situation. But it doesn't necessarily have to be framed as this is, just sheltering the dumbs from wanting to buy a truck. These are advertisements on things that are poisoning people, in the same way that cigarettes were poisoning people, in the same way that advertising pharmaceuticals that are extremely addictive and they don't tell you that. I mean, that's harming people.
I think that's actually
Fossil
a stronger...
fuel trucks are harming people.
I think that's actually a much stronger argument, truly.
Yeah.
I think, like, if we're talking about climate change, we're talking about carbon and gases and things like that. Carbon taxes are the way to go. And you can make a very good argument that right now the fossil fuel producers are not paying for the externalities, and thereby they're getting a subsidy unless you have a carbon tax. If we're talking about pollutants that are getting into people listed on a day-to-day basis, I think that's a stronger argument of it's similar to cigarettes. It's just cigarettes that come out of that.
I mean, also, though, like, if you're a working class landscaper here in Central Texas, a truck is feeding you and your family. Like, and we need to understand that when you're having these conversations and what you're trying to do is move the Overton window closer to your perspective, that it can't just be you're ruining the environment and so you should never look at the possibility of doing it, when for the perspective of a truck owner, that might be the thing that they need.
I think Jen's made a different... I'll let Jen make her own point.
Yeah, the thing that the truck owner needs in this case is the bed of the truck. It needs the size of the truck. If a Rivian exists and we make that financially equal to the fossil fuel, and you have these two options and you are aware that one of them poisons your neighborhood and one does not, you can still feed your family and not choose the poisonous
for the record,
one.
The last time I saw Rivian loose is like $20,000 per truck right now. So it would take a tremendous subsidy to bring them in
we are
competition.
right now in the middle of like societally figuring this out, so I understand the economics of it.
Yeah.
But like I'm saying, this is not a factor in a lot of these decisions. For the people that have their big fossil fuel trucks because they think they're cool, that do not use them for work, they use them to get to their office job, they are making different decisions.
I think we're in straw truck territory now, but
no, we're really not, because I resent the shit out of walking down the street and being poisoned by these trucks. And that is what is happening. As a pedestrian, I am being poisoned by every single one of these fossil fuel burning trucks. And this is something that is not generally a part of this conversation because it's always made about climate change. It should also be made about pollution and the harm that it does to our communities when we have so many of these people burning fossil fuels.
I forgot to bring up another reason that I don't think this is useful in Scotland is they already have, excessive emission zones. So Edinburgh itself is an excessive emission zone, along with Glasgow and a couple of other cities in Scotland, where you can't drive an SUV in it because you can't, I don't know SUV specific, you can't drive anything that has excessive pollution or you will have a steep fine.
That's great.
Yeah. I'm just saying, again, I think the advertising, like, you wouldn't even have an SUV in Scotland, but I don't, negative externalities are a thing, and we have to come up with a way to deal with them. I don't disagree with any of the foundational stuff you're saying.
all right. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Misleading content using free or cheap programs. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Will play the song that I put in the doc. No, I'm going to play it right now.
Thank you, because I didn't hear it.
I couldn't get
Cut
it to
all this
play.
shit out, Will. Here we go.
Nice. Finally, some hairband music about Wallace and me and the fuck bus. By the way, we're not fucking each other.
I was going to say, it sounds a little bit like you're fucking the dog, but mostly it's a great time. It's 99%
just goes
a great
to sleep
time.
when that happens with a nice lady.
At our live shows, can that be his walk-on song?
Yes.
I was going to go with Boney Rasputin, but that's a good runner-up.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Thank you to the great and powerful person who typed in those prompts.
Those were excellent production values. Do you think that was AI or a person?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But agree, the production
really
value
like
on AI is getting much better, yeah.
Yeah. I'm doing my part right. How about only allowing people to vote after serving military service like in Starship Troopers? Service guarantees citizenship.
I'm a hard no on this one. I don't think that...
What would you serve in the military if you were forced, if you were drafted, Jen? What would you want?
Me?
Yeah.
I would want to go into the medical type thing. Like I would want to be
Like an
the
army
doctor
medic?
or nurse. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you'd have to go to basic.
I'd have to do
I
that
guess
anyway.
for all of them, right?
Yeah.
But some of them are worse than others, aren't they?
I don't know. I'm not in the military.
Yeah.
But I
Military
do.
people write in.
Am I picking my service specifically or what I'm doing in the
Can I explain my
service?
hard no before I get every veteran telling me that I'm an asshole?
I don't know that they're going to disagree with you, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's other ways to serve the country other than being a warrior. And I also...
Podcaster.
Well, I mean, in a way, I think we are serving the country. I know it's a cheesy thing today, but to say, but watching Congress as much as I do, like, I do think that's kind of my way of helping the country. I think journalism can be helpful.
I'm a parasite.
I think, working in the medical field, I think teaching, there's the firefighters, there's so many ways to serve your country. And I think every single person who does those jobs deserves to vote. But also, I think just being makes you a citizen. I don't see why you should have to choose a job. Like, why should someone who's in the private sector and serving our economy not get a vote? So I don't like this idea at all.
I'm in agreement. Yeah. Robert Heinlein's a great author. I love Robert Heinlein. I think Starship Troopers is him basically doing a big thought experiment on fascism / how much fun it is to be at the space military. So in the book Starship Troopers, like the conceit is that
the book, for the record, the book and the movie are
very different.
Very different.
Very, very different.
Yeah.
Great abs on what's her name in the movie.
Denise Richards.
That's it. Denise Richards. Peak Denise Richards. No, the book's different. In the book,
We're looking at the abs?
well, I saw Mystery Science Theater 3000's version
Yet
of it.
another puzzle piece.
No, hold on.
Fills out
Totally-
the mosaic.
He didn't see Wild Things. I don't
Totally
think.
a boob guy. I've seen that. I've seen one clip from it about 400 times when I was 16.
A great movie,
I saw that movie,
It's such a
Starship
good
Troopers,
movie.
within the context of Mystery Science Theater 3000, and they kept making fun of abs and ab blaster and stuff. The premise in the book is that if you serve in the military, you are showing that you are willing to sublimate your individual needs for the good of the group, and you should not be able to steer the group itself unless you're willing to sublimate your individual needs. It's an interesting thought experiment, but I fundamentally disagree with it for all the reasons Jen said. I'm against the draft. Drafts are slave soldiers. That's it. This is kind of the same thing.
Speaking of Kentucky parks, right? There's a park in Kentucky called Big Bone Lick State Park.
God bless you, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Damn.
Bless your hearts.
Where the grass is blue, and so are the state park names. Justin Lookalike writes, I was playing with Night Cafe and AI art generator and accidentally created an image that looked so stunningly like Justin, I laughed myself hoarse. I'm going to put this one up here on the YouTube, but
The T-shirt
The
says Satan
T-shirt's what
loves
makes
you.
it. Because you look like a midpoint between you and, weirdly enough, my friend Hepburn who lives in Edinburgh. But the Satan loves you bit's very you.
It's always fascinating when people say, oh my God, this looks so much like you, whether or not the thing or person they are pointing out are Hispanic or Arab. Because this one to me looks identical to Saddam Hussein. This is Saddam Hussein wearing a Satan Loves You t-shirt and sprinkling magic pixie dust
I'm going to
out of
say
his fingers.
the coloring is Justin Robert Young. The facial structure is not Justin Robert Young.
No.
That one looks like, I am not giving birth to my daughter, but rather have already given birth to Uday and Kusei.
But the Satan Loves You T-shirt, it's so you.
Sure, I guess. I mean, directionally. I've never
could see you
owned a
wearing
Satan Loves You t-shirt.
Oh, you will after this.
I guess so. I guess so. And I'm moving to Baghdad.
Perfect.
I hear there's a real fixer-upper. My favorite part of the show, writes, I really like the part of the show where Andrew says something and Jen says, I disagree, and then proceeds to mostly agree with Andrew with some minor variations.
I love that too. We agree on a lot of shit.
I feel like that happened a lot today, actually, both sides.
Yeah.
About Project 2025. Will no one think of the segment producers, right? I agree with the panel that putting out policy positions on papers is just what think tanks do, with Jen, that a congressional investigation is inappropriate. But as for everything else discussed in Project 2025, isn't taking your enemy's bad ideas just what pundits, campaigns, and politically aware lay people do? Your contempt is selective.
Our contempt? We were the ones discussing it. Do we have contempt for ourselves for discussing it?
I'm full of self-contempt.
No, I have contempt for television news.
Yeah, me too.
I will say, yeah. I spit venom.
I don't have contempt for people talking about Project 2025. I have contempt for those misrepresenting it, where like
like John Oliver this Sunday.
I didn't watch that, but if he didn't mention that it's a Heritage Foundation document and not a Trump campaign document, then that is disingenuous. And like all the things, until you wrote this up, Justin, and I had to look into it, I did not know this was a Heritage Foundation document. And I think that is the problem, where people are making it seem like it's coming straight from Trump
It's
when
the
it
Trumpian
isn't.
Necronomicon, that if he reads it out loud, he'll be able to summon Cthulhu.
Yeah, well,
That too.
Oliver specifically, and I only watched the first half, did say that it was a Heritage Foundation. He said like, oh, well, it's Heritage Foundation plus Turning Point plus the NRA, and they have all come together to put this forward. It's spearheaded by the Heritage Foundation. They might have gotten a cosign from these other groups, but this is a Heritage Foundation document. But there is like a hand-waving element of people who are not really familiar with the Heritage Foundation or governmental NGOs in general, I would assume, that it's like, well, yeah, but that's Federalist Society. Federalist Society judges, Heritage Foundation executive. It makes sense.
Can I say what I'm contemptuous of?
What?
Dumb arguments. There are good arguments to be had on any issue. You can make a Foursquare. I love making mental models here. Take any issue. There's a good and smart argument for and a good and smart argument against. I think we've had a lot of those on the show. There's also a dumb fuck reason to oppose something and a dumb fuck reason to support something. And I have problems with the dumb fuck side of the equation when it comes to punditry. For people that are like, if people are going into the Trump ideas going, this is a bad policy, this is why this isn't going to work, maybe I'll agree with them, maybe I'll disagree with them. That to me is a good argument to have. Just trying to scare people by like effectively lying to them, that's a dumb fuck tactic, and I'm always going to be contemptuous.
Project 2025 is the end of America. Like, okay. Like, that's the dumb fuck shit that I've been seeing on TikTok, and that's freaking people out.
Yeah.
I think, it's an immediate red flag for me to not take you serious. If it's like, anyway, and in Project 2025, I'm like, oh, okay, all right. I mean, I don't know whether or not I should do this now or later, but as I'm now on week 2 of digesting all of cable news silently, whenever I'm in my office.
This is the new monitor. You've got
The quad monitor. It's fascinating to watch the large scale stories that each network is telling. Because Fox's is still essentially runs the Ailes playbook. They are a thumb on the scale in the direction of conservatism. They're usually done in the classic conservative media model of, we only need to say this because the rest of the media won't, kind of perspective.
The mainstream media that we're not a part of.
The mainstream media of which we're not a part of.
Even though we're the America's most watched television show.
Exactly. But that's the conservative media as birthed through pamphlets in the 60s and AM radio in the 80s and then cable news in the 90s and 2000s. That's always been the directional thing. You feel like you are put upon. You can't really say what you mean in public. And so we're going to give voice to something from your perspective. CNN is all over the map. Sometimes they're like, they have the dumbest segment you've ever seen. Sometimes they have Jane Fonda on for no reason, just to talk about Jane Fonda things. Sometimes they are actually doing something that either Fox News or MSNBC are, and punching back at like Biden's bullying of the media. They had a whole segment on an Atlantic article that was like, why is the Biden team spending so much time policing media that's largely friendly to them? Like, that was actually a decent, it was like an interesting segment. MSNBC is in a fucking universe of their own. Like, it is
unwatchable.
White House state, like Pyongyang fucking state television. Like, it is just misinformation and everything's great and Project 2025. It is that 24/7. And then every once in a while, they'll report like an NBC News style kind of thing that will have all the trappings. It's all very proper. They're the only ones that are like they.
This is NBC. We're talking about
MSNBC.
Oh, MSNBC. Okay.
MSNBC. They are weirdly the like stodgiest of them. They feel very like they're trying to be like an old style news broadcast.
Do they talk like this when they're discussing things?
Well,
Justin, the problem is
watch silently.
Okay.
Like I watch
Man,
it like
you're pulling a Roger Ailes, dude.
Yeah. But they're very like when they're serious, they're very serious. Like Fox
Well,
will
because
have
they're
some laughs.
saving the country.
Yeah.
Don't you understand?
Fox will have some like you'll see a lot of like Jesse Waters or Greg Gutfeld being like, oh, geez, these guys never on MSNBC. Never will they be like smiling or hand waving. They are always very serious. And CNN somewhere in between, but you can tell that they're like, we don't know if this is going to exist in 5 years. David Zaslav is running this entire fucking operation into the ground.
And what's the fourth in the quad?
Yeah.
BBC, which is BBC. They're just like they're so dry that you can only really tell bias in like chyrons and story selection, but also it's mixed in with like cricket updates, so I have no fucking idea what's happening.
And global weather.
Global weather, yeah. I like their weather graphics package.
I do too.
They do a lot of like it's very wind current centric in a way that American weather patterns have all surrendered to like various different colors, but they just have like a million different white arrows that are slowly sweeping in from the Gulf of Mexico.
I like that the BBC's done a 180 on regional accents, because when I was a kid, anyone on the BBC had to talk like this. It was very specific. It's not upper crust. It's different. It's a specific kind of. It's the kind of accent that Patrick Stewart has, who himself is from Yorkshire. And then they went 180 and it's like, right, well, I think the thing going on, yeah. Like you can only get on the BBC now if you are local to some place where you're like, that dude's from Birmingham.
You get Doctor Who. I mean, Doctor Who has undergone a lot of changes over the last few years, but they're another one that you can tell a very stodgy property that has swung way too far, where now like everybody on Doctor Who has like a Midlands accent, and none of them have
Doctor
posh.
Who, I think we're going to need to go later.
Exactly. None of them have posh British accents in a way that they used to only have. It was like 90 posh British accents and then like one Cockney to show like we know a poor.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
I will only vote for Trump if he implements 2025 rights, a Supreme Court full of Gorsuches, reform the FBI and DOJ, shrink the government and deregulate, less interference in Eurasia. Yes, please.
I just think it's so weird to vote for people who are promising to dismantle your government.
I mean,
okay.
look,
Like what you like.
Here's my only thing, just to reiterate the point that we made last week. The only people that benefit from hysterical discourse about Project 2025 specifically, I'm separating this from criticism of Trump. We're in an election year. Criticize Trump. Criticize what Trump would do. Criticize what he did in the past, what he might do going forward. Please do that. This is the year that we're supposed to do it. I like our world before where we took 3 years off in between the 1 year that everybody went fucking insane. But this is the year that we're supposed to, designated year where everybody goes crazy.
This is cuckoo year.
This is cuckoo year. If you are specifically mentioning Project 2025, please understand. And even you who's writing it on Facebook and putting it on TikTok, you are benefiting the Heritage Foundation. They are aggregating everything you are saying. They are putting it into sizzle reels. They are sending it to donors who are getting super rock hard about it and then cutting gigantic checks to make that system bigger. That is the only thing that's happening. And I know it for a fact because I've been around enough nonprofits to know that they're the people that are the most funded, the departments that are the most funded are the ones that find this stuff and get it to donors. They visit donors and hand them packets of things saying, look what we did.
Do you think because they are kind of speaking for the Trump administration that they run the risk of pissing off Trump and him just being like, fuck all y'all, I'm not doing anything you want?
I think, well, number one, Trump's going to be excited when the right people are getting mad because he likes that.
But he'll get pissed off, though, if somebody's getting too big for their britches. I mean, you saw that with Vivek Ramaswamy. Like, he's a little bit of a raw nerve when it comes to his ego.
When they come to him and say, you've promised to do X, Y, and Z, he'll say, no, I haven't. And his campaign team will say, no, I haven't. And go look at this.
We've got to focus on sharks, people. We get the sharks taken care of. Would you jump
we'll get
off
rid of the DOJ electric boat, or if it meant getting bit by a shark?
Keeping in mind that if you're in the water, you're getting elected. Like, none of it made any sense. Like, even if you choose the sharks, you're fucking dead from the electricity.
It does
can't.
sound like something would be really funny if you slowed it down so he sounded stoned and then just put reggae music behind it. Like it would be like a 90s joke.
Yeah.
About
so
corporate
good.
media rights, the establishment. I think it's pretty fucking weird that Jen is talking about the, quote, neoliberal globalists that are trying to make the EU happen, unquote. The EU already exists, has existed for decades, and has been one of the most successful institutions in maintaining and supporting peace and prosperity within Europe, which is a pretty big deal.
Someone's pro-EU. Okay, I know the EU exists. I don't know if you're aware that it hasn't existed for even my whole lifetime. I believe it was created, don't quote me on this, but I think this is quote, I think it was created in 1993. I mean, the Simpsons are older than the EU. So, and the EU is constantly expanding. They just entered, North Macedonia is now in the EU. And there's things that
Finally.
I know.
Go Northies.
But there's definitely things I like about the EU. Like as a traveler there, I love that I can get into any of them and then just like bop around, go wherever I want. It's easier for me that there's one currency. But there are people in the European Union that don't love their country's sovereignty being taken away by the EU. They don't love that there's regulations coming from this body that their country has to implement. Some of them liked having different currencies. Some of them feel like their culture is being watered down. Like if you're going to have a discussion about the European Union, anything related to it, and you pretend that's not a reality, then you're not understanding the politics of the European Union. Like it is an issue and has been for the few decades that the EU has existed. It is still a relatively new thing in the world, and they're still figuring it out. And there is a faction of them. Brexit fucking happened. There is a significant number of people that don't love the EU.
Yeah, there's two different, I think, EU sides. The old model, the old argument until Britain left was, is the European Union a free trade network? Or is it the United States of Europe? Yeah. That was the locus point. And like,
because the precursor was the common market.
Yes,
right?
that's right. The precursor was
started in the 1950s.
Yeah,
it was a trade thing.
Well, it was steel and oil, and the point of it was to keep, what was it? To keep Germany down, France up, and Britain in. Yeah. Like it was basically, how do we keep the Germans from fucking everybody up within 20 years of the last war, and not make them communist? Like that was it was a collective agreement between nation states in terms of, I think, like steel and coal. And then in the 90s or whenever it became it, that was the old, like the British, they were the drag on it until they left. They were the anchor where they were like, hey, we just wanted to free trade with you all, which I think was great. I think like the freedom of movement has been cool, but for the weird problems that arise.
But also, we're going to make a regulation on tomatoes from Brussels.
And that's
we're going to dictate what kind of toaster you can buy.
That's the United States of Europe bit that I think gets in trouble, and it's not even like. The United States of Europe, I like it to a point because I think it's actually a better proxy for American comparisons than any member state in Europe. Like it makes more sense to compare the United States to Europe than it does to compare America to Denmark.
For strictly our metaphorical purposes, it's great.
Yeah, but the bit where they I think go off the rails and the Brexiters had a good point was that there's a severe democratic deficit. It would be like if the United States, all legislation was written by the Congressional Research Service, and then once it was written, it was given to members of Congress to vote on. That's effectively the model they have. Even then, the members of Congress it'd be like if all the governors got to vote on legislation written by the Congressional Research Service, and all Congress got to do was the budget, and like because they want like this European dream of highly insulated, highly competent technocrats that run the system for everybody, which is different than that freedom of movement, freedom of goods and services thing.
Former ink-stained wrench writes, I studied journalism and worked at daily newspapers for the first 5 years of my adult life. Your comment about newspapers not wanting to put content online because it would take away from the print product was like a slap-in-the-face reminder of the uphill battles I faced as a 20-something with no power. After 3 rounds of layoffs in 2 years at a Gannett newsroom, I moved on to knowing my dream of making a difference was dead. This episode hit close to home and represents a sad truth about the state of Odyssey journalism. Side note, what do you think about using AI to read-write local news for dissemination through podcasts and radio? Minimal humans, but potential to fill a void, becoming ever more vast. One mic on a city council chamber and an AI should be able to summarize it, right? I think that AI has a tremendous potential for local news. I don't know if it's that specifically. I don't know if it's something that we will see going forward, but I do think that I've actually had conversations with journalistic entities about using AI in their system. And what I have always told them is to not think about AI as a replacement for people, but rather a army of interns that can just do a lot of grunt work that journalism has been so atrophied over the last 10 years, you've just assumed one person should do. So there's been so many folding in of jobs that used to be other separate jobs into one person that now the idea of like, oh, well, can I have another person just means a different thing. What I've tried to put forward is like, no, think about it like you had the 90s headcount and now wonder what you could do if all those other people were underneath a management structure of a real person and they were kind of dumb, but they were really fast. Like, how would you handle a staff that's kind of stupid, but takes direction and is lightning fast? That's the way that you should think about it. And I do think that there's a lot of great ideas that you could do with local journalism.
I think that's a good point. I think local journalism is important. And the thing that bothers me at the moment is that we don't have a working model or a working alternative. The two models that are basically existent are a for-profit model that doesn't work anymore, or we get the government to fund it, which opens up all sorts of problems in terms of, like, is it just going to be captured by political action committees that want to fund? Like, neither of those are very appealing to me. It's going to probably involve innovating a new model, and it might involve AI, as Justin's talking.
Good billionaire versus bad billionaire, writes, it's interesting to me that Bezos became rich by creating the most trusted company in America, but his owning the Post is always cited as improper billionaire influence over the news media. Meanwhile, the New York Times is owned by a billionaire heirs of a robber baron with a cash infusion from a foreign billionaire with a legal monopoly on Mexican telecommunications. And yet that never gets mentioned, like it wasn't mentioned on this episode.
Sometimes we don't mention things because we don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I personally don't know what the fuck you're talking about, so.
I'll weigh in a little bit.
The
I think
Sulzbergers and Carlos Slim.
Antipathy to billionaires is so much of it is spin and flavor and branding. So, like, no one's like, oh, Oprah robbed America blind. She's a billionaire. Like, everybody likes Warren Buffett because he's cute and he was in that movie Up.
I don't.
So
like
he
him.
seems like it. Most people like Warren Buffett. He seems like a nice guy. Then, like, you remember, like, for a while when Steve Jobs was around, like, everybody hated Bill Gates. Then Steve Jobs died, and then everybody's like, oh, Bill Gates is kind of nice now. Like, I think that the position on billionaires is oftentimes, are they cute? Or are they not cute? And it boils down to that.
Do you believe that there can be ethical billionaires?
Yes, of course.
I don't think it's about the person. I think it's the idea that we've allowed in our society for individuals to collect that much money that they are able to make societal decisions because they have that much money. I don't think it's the billionaire, like the actual human himself. Like, I don't detest Jeff Bezos. I'm sure he has friends and family that love him. I'm sure if I knew him, I would find very good things about him. He does look like Pitbull. That's a real thing, which, like, okay, he doesn't look bad. He's kind of ripped. It's not about the individual. It's about the concentration of wealth. It's the fact that there are Amazon workers that are on food stamps and getting government subsidies while Jeff Bezos has billions of dollars and is not, paying the people that make that wealth possible. It's the inequality that is the problem. It's not the humans. And I think when I talk about billionaires, I'm talking about that and not the actual humans, which is why, like, whoever owns the New York Times, they're not on my radar because they're not on my radar. It's just the fact that billionaires are able to own mass communication outlets like that. That's the issue. It's not the individuals.
I don't like billionaires if they're taking the money through coercion, if they're doing it through rent seeking, where some program law or monopoly allows them to extract wealth, then it's bad. When billionaires become billionaires by generating wealth, it's fantastic. I look at Jeff Bezos. I don't know him personally. He might be a dickbag. He might be a nice guy. I think Amazon's been broadly very good for the country in terms of being able to help people. I don't know the specific. I think, like, while there are companies that we could say are doing the food stamp thing, I think that Amazon, starts at like $18 or $20 an hour for its workers. So
yeah, but for some people, it's still not enough to support a family. You can work full time and still not have enough to, like, pay for your kids. So I just think that if the government is subsidizing any company in any way that has a billionaire attached to it, something's wrong. And the Waltons are probably a better example of that because we know damn well that they have people that are not able to make ends meet. Well, they have 5 billionaires on their roster. So that's the issue. If you have people that are doing the actual work of generating that wealth that cannot afford a home and a decent life, and you have someone that's got more money than they could possibly spend in one lifetime, that's the issue. That's the problem.
Well, I'm going to give Bezos a pass again, because like the push for $15 an hour minimum wage nationally, they would already be passed. So whatever the pipe dream is for Bezos and Amazon, I think they're exceeding that. I tend to look at this proportionally. When you look at like Bill Gates, by most economists is thought to have netted about 2% of the economic growth that he unleashed in the world. That to me is very fair. I'm happy with Bill Gates keeping 2% of the economic growth. So I want to make sure that the system that we devise is one where the self-interest of billionaires is collectively good. And so long as they are generating value for everybody, I'm okay with them being billionaires.
I still don't think that wealth.
You don't believe in an ethical society there should be a billionaire if their employees are suffering.
That's part of it. The other part of it is like Bill Gates is another good example that his vast accumulation of wealth, which most of it came through the stock market, not through the actual company that he ran, but him having that much wealth, he affected global COVID vaccine policy. This one man had that much power over what happened in the entire world. I think that's a problem because that isn't a democratic system. That's an oligarch system where someone gets so wealthy that their wealth can have them have that much power. Like that's my fear, that we have people that have so much more money than governments. I think if Elon Musk, last time I looked this up, if he was his own country, he'd be the 50th largest country in the world. It's one dude. And again, most of this wealth.
Most countries suck.
Okay. But at least most countries, they're picking their rulers. I didn't pick Elon Musk. So I don't love that he's so integral to our state or to our space program. And like, no one appointed him. No one picked him. It's just because he has a company. And again, most of that wealth is
our stagnant ass space program that we had.
He didn't rescue shit. It's still our money paying for it. It's just his company that's developing
We're doing more because we're buying off the shelf rockets from him.
Yeah, we are paying. Our tax money is still paying for those rockets. They're just paying Elon Musk instead.
Yeah, but we used to be paying Russia.
The point that I'm making is that we have people that are able to make societal level decisions that are not elected. And it is because they are allowed to accumulate wealth the way they are through the stock market. It's not their companies that are doing it. It is the stock market that's doing it.
Public support of their companies.
Sort of. It's more like gambling. But
do you think billionaires
public gambling?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it okay for billionaires to exist in society? Would you want to arrange it so they go away?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
This feels like we should do a whole episode on billionaires.
Yeah, I need to think about this some more. I don't know how to.
I'm not wasting this fight on the mailbag. We're gonna save it.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's a fight. I don't know what to do about it, but I'm.
Oh, I can smell it.
That's your fart.
Maybe. Mask Off writes, the news media's behavior was terribly directionally biased. Trump pretty much unveiled what many suspected. They didn't flex their anti-establishment muscles unless it was against Trump. They were all up in our business about how terrible Bush 2 was and then heaped endless praise on Obama while he quietly committed war crimes. And now they're providing cover for this corpse incumbent because somehow Trump is the biggest existential threat to democracy.
Sounds like someone is watching too much MSNBC.
City Boys Up writes, the local news podcast network Keaton was alluding to is the CityCast network. They do daily podcasts and newsletters about their respective cities, covering everything from city hall budget hearings to new restaurants opening. Serendipitously, the network is owned by the Graham Holdings Company, the former owners of the Washington Post, who got that Bezos payout. Currently, there is a CityCast for Austin, Boise, Chicago, D.C., Denver, Houston, Las Vegas, Madison, Nashville, Philly, Pittsburgh, Portland, and Salt Lake. If you live in one of those cities, check them out. See what your city is talking about.
Thank you for this, listener. I read this earlier today and went and downloaded an episode of the Austin CityCast network. It just when I heard about this, Austin didn't yet have an affiliate or program with this, but apparently like 3 weeks ago it started up.
Oh.
So you
awesome.
you have alerted me to this. I just heard an interview with our mayor, and it was cool. Thank you.
Is it good?
I mean, he's a mayor, so he's jolly.
No, I mean like the production and stuff.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I mean it's very of the one episode I've heard, it's very interview focused, and I just know what the mayor sounds like now. That's
Gotcha.
it. But it was still worthwhile.
Good to know. Don't Mess with Texas writes, have you explored the business model for the Texas Tribune? They were just getting started when I graduated journalism school and moved to Austin. Yeah, the Texas Tribune is a nonprofit. I have very mixed feelings about nonprofits and their nonprofit business model.
Do you know what the largest nonprofit is in the United States, Justin?
What is that?
I want you to hazard a guess. What do you think the largest nonprofit is?
That's a nice noise.
NRA?
No, it's Kaiser Permanente, the health insurance company that
gotcha.
operates in
Yeah.
California. They're a nonprofit.
Gotcha.
Because they don't have dividends, so they're good people.
Nonprofits in general, and I've worked around and next to many of them in my life, are operated by people for whom the word nonprofit is a great way to describe their organizational and management skills. They are not great at doing it. I think that it tends to lead to sloppy math. I think it oftentimes can lead to messianic power structures where people wind up dancing around a strongman leader because you are dependent on donors. And you wind up finding out, and this is just by human nature, that it's easier to get a large chunk of your budget from one person than it is to get smaller parts of your budget from many different people. And so you wind up being shaped to the will of your donors that, especially if you're popular or you are successful, they want more control over. And so I don't think that that's always the worst thing on the planet, but I am a bit of a stickler when it comes to journalism, that I would much rather find a like Cracker Jack brand that you could say like, oh, the Texas Tribune sells children's candy, and every year you buy children's candy to support local journalism, and then the journalism can just do what it wants, and it doesn't have to be beholden to subscriptions. It doesn't have to be beholden to a donor. It can just go where it is. I think the Texas Tribune does good work. I've actually talked to the Texas Tribune, so I don't want to impugn them directly. I will just say broadly, and this is, I think, where Jen and I might part ways. I find the things that you say about advertisers, I fear far more about nonprofit donor-based journalism models. I think that the direct pulling and shaping of editorial decisions is more likely to happen in that than it is an advertiser model.
Yeah, I don't agree just because of my own experience, but I'm also just like a one person. Like, I don't really know how nonprofits are structured. I know they have boards and whole other so I don't know. I don't know how to compare that to what I do. But I think I would be more likely to be corrupted.
I don't think that what you do is, I don't think what we do is nonprofit.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know enough about nonprofit to like even say, like, I don't know. I'm just going to sit here and be like,
yeah.
I've got a guy that just wrote a really interesting book on taxes, which is, I want to highlight this, actually interesting. It will be coming on the Political Orphanage soon. And it was, I'm planning to do a bonus episode with him where I'm just like, we had an hour and a half conversation. And then I was like, dude, can I just ask you random questions like, can strippers deduct breast implants? Is that allowed? And he's like, yeah. And so he's going to come out for a bonus episode. And most of it's just going to be me talking to him about the system that I wish to reform, how to scam it until I succeed in reforming it.
Yeah.
And like one of the things that I brought up was like, if we were to, we couldn't declare ourselves nonprofits as individual sole proprietors. That like to be a nonprofit, you can't have dividends and you have to have a board of directors. I don't know how many it is, let's say 7 or something like that. But what we could do if we were making serious bank is we could combine forces with Daily Tech News Show and Modern Rogue and a few other ones and form an educational apparatus and then just not pay any corporate taxes. So there are ways that, anyway, fun stuff coming up on the Political Orphanage of tomfoolery involving the tax code. That's what the people want.
Man,
the people want a wonky deep dive followed by questions about breast implantation surgery as a deduction.
People are going to be really, really curious when there's like 5 minutes of the podcast that are just silent, and then next week we launch a nonprofit. The rats are feasting, writes. I was the local newspaper man for a decade. We had a small circulation that kept on shrinking. When I left to go into teaching, I noticed that nobody who came into my old job covered finance like I used to. With no one watching the proverbial cheese, the rats are feasting.
Num, num, num.
That'll happen. That'll happen. We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg. On PX3, we are talking Trump Veep Stakes with Tom LoBianco on our Wednesday episode. And then Friday, we are welcoming Chase Oliver and Mike Termat.
Wow.
The Libertarian ticket on PX3 on Friday.
Cool.
Okay. I will listen to that. I'm very curious to see how you conduct that interview, given your thoughts on the Libertarian Party's politics. Not their politics, they're campaigning.
I do ask them. I was very respectful of their time. We already did the interview. I was very respectful of their time. So I asked them just questions about who they feel are disaffected voters on either side of the aisle and what their strategy is in terms of getting above where they have historically gotten. And then at the end, you're going to want to listen to the end, because at the end, I say that I thought Donald Trump speaking at their convention was the biggest act of political cuckoldry I've ever seen. Do they agree? Their answers on Friday's edition of Politics, Politics, Politics.
Did you ask how many milligrams the edible was?
It wasn't that dude. It was the dude that won because that dude fell out.
Yeah, but he still might know. I'd like confirmation on that.
On the edible? No, I didn't advance the edible story.
That's okay.
They were
probably
nice.
best you didn't.
They were nice enough. I was weighing on whether or not I wanted to make an edible joke, but also it's like, I don't know. I'm curious to see what the feedback is on it, because this was a little bit more of a straight, aside from the one silly question at the end, it was a little bit more of a straight interview, because I didn't want to treat him like a joke.
Yeah.
Like, I think my commentary when I am being funny and silly is one thing, and I would not, if they were to bring it up or something like that, I would not shy away from anything that I've said. But I didn't want to just act like, they were the
Stoners.
the weird dudes, and I'm the morning zoo jock, and I'm just gonna clown them. They're on a lot of ballots, and there are a lot of people that might vote for them. And
Yeah.
2020, when I was in Oakland, I interviewed all the third-party candidates, or at least I think for whatever reason, Rocky LaFuente, who didn't come on, but he had proxies that came on for the Alliance Party, but brought on Joe Jorgensen from the Libertarian Party, brought on Howie Hawkins from Green, who I really liked. I really like Howie Hawkins. I think he's same kind of Jen Heaton relationship, where if we were both in the Senate, we would vehemently disagree on this stuff, but we'd also probably share an office on everything else. Mm-hmm. And then it was also fun talking to the Constitution Party guy, who I know less about, but he was like, social conservatism and tariffs. And I was like, you should never vote ever. I've contravened everything you stand for, or at least that you're talking about on this program. I'm hoping to do that again this year as we get closer to it. Mm-hmm. I didn't interview Kanye West. I wanted to, but he did not agree.
no, that would have been a good one.
Yeah.
Heaton?
Speaking of candidates, this week on the Political Orphanage, I am going down the rabbit hole on RFK Jr. I took Jen's advice. I listened to the Joe Rogan interview. I listened to the Lex Friedman interview. Did some scrounging around on him to give my assessment of him as a candidate, what he believes, what he's being unfairly maligned on, what he's good on, what he's bad on. And then I brought on David Drucker from the Dispatch to analyze his campaign itself. So part one of the episode's me going like, hey, this, from what I can tell, this is what he thinks about vaccines. This is what he thinks about war. This is what he thinks about inflation. Part two is he actually going to get on the ballots? Who's he take more from, Trump or Biden? Spoiler, all that stuff. Looking at the mechanics on the campaign side of it. That's this week on the Political Orphanage.
They won't give me anybody from their ballot team. I keep emailing them to give me someone who's working on their ballot strategy.
Because they, slight spoiler alert here, because I'm on their mailing list, I think, because I went to that event in Austin, and they're phrasing everything as, we just submitted paperwork for yet another state. Congratulations, everybody, we did it. And I'm going, great. Can you just clarify real quick which states you're on the ballot in? Because submitting paperwork's not necessarily the same thing as getting on.
They've clarified that for me, of where they're actually on the ballot by way of certification and which they've applied for.
How many do they have?
They have 8 at this moment that I'm aware of, and they've applied for like 30.
Yeah, so the reason why they're phrasing it like that is because they are currently, and you're going to hear a lot more of this going from now until the debate, that they want to essentially get CNN in trouble for an in-kind donation to the Trump and Biden campaigns by way of FEC law, because FEC demands that there be some kind of reciprocity, and you're sticking up for the same kind of criteria to have these people on. they don't believe that the FEC, or the FEC has admitted, they've made a big deal about this, that presumptive nominee is not a term in their bylaws. So CNN is greenlighting both Trump and Biden, even though they don't have 270 ballot access right now because the states haven't officially gone through the paperwork in the same way that they need to. But because Trump and Biden are presumptive nominees, that's why they are on the stage. RFK is challenging that. He's going to make a lot more noise about it going forward. But that's
I wish him the best
Good.
of luck, but there's been a lot. Yeah, I wish him absolute luck on that. I would fucking love for RFK to be on the debate stage. I think it would be amazing.
And Jill Stein and Ben Chait.
all
like,
of them.
All of them.
But also, like,
nobody wants to hear
I don't think any of them are going to get on
do.
the stage, sadly, just because I think that is so.
It's all fucking rigged.
It's even more rigged this time than it was last time. So,
I mean, they're rigged. It's what the two people that are polling more than anybody want to see. It's what the majority of America wants to see.
No.
What do you mean, no?
I mean, no. I think we want more options than Trump and Biden. I think it's the thing all of us are upset about is we only have these two choices.
When
and they all,
asked who they want
suck.
to vote for, the vast majority of America says they want those two people. We could be mad about it. We can think they're dumb. But that's the vast majority of people want one of those two dudes.
Yeah, it's like if you go to a buffet and they show you that there's two options and you don't know that there's three in the back. So you pick one of the two that are sitting in front of you and you don't know about the secret menu. Like if we had five people on the stage, it might be different.
5 wide polling, or 6 wide now with the Libertarians, including Jill Stein, including RFK.
They think the other candidates are wasted votes. So they don't even look at them.
But that's it. That's a problem.
the reason I say it's rigged is that up until it was
it is also rigged.
completely and utterly co-opted. And I'm talking about the debates here, not the election, but the debates. Until it was utterly co-opted by the Republican and Democratic Party, they're just going to run it themselves now. As we've talked about previously on the program, whenever anybody got within striking distance of the threshold to get into the debate, they changed the threshold for the debate. That's rigged. They want to maintain a
Well, stop beating up on the commission. They're already dead.
yeah, good.
Well, exactly. Now we have CNN and they get to make the rules. Like it's just got even more absurd. So we did a whole episode about this.
Yeah.
You're just poking the two of us.
Essentially.
Yeah.
For money. Jen, what do you have?
Fucking congressional dish. I have frustrations. So I've been working on this Boeing episode. And on the plane on the way back here, I
Door
was
fell
gonna.
off.
That didn't happen.
Suck
but
out your laptop. All your notes are gone. They're flying over Cincinnati right now.
I definitely now know where to look for those, fake doors. And I was only a couple rows behind it. So I'm just like, please, bolts, stay where you are. But I was working on the script on the plane. And it occurred to me that I was sitting next to my 10-year-old niece on her first ever flight. And maybe Auntie Jen shouldn't be writing right next to this girl who can read about all the plane crashes. So I couldn't do that. So I watched another hearing.
Well, there's another hearing yesterday, right?
Well, so that's the other fucking problem. So while I was on the plane, there was a hearing, and then we got the CEO's testimony yesterday.
And a new whistleblower.
And a new whistleblower. So now that episode, I thought I was at the finish line, and now I am so much further away. But the hearing that I watched on the plane,
Even Too Short hasn't blown the whistle this long.
this is one of those episodes.
3 people are going to really laugh.
Yep,
Okay.
we weren't 2 of them.
Nope.
This episode I thought was going to be really easy. I was like, I'll just watch these hearings, put them together. And this is the story that just keeps building and building and building and building. And so I'm going to have to cap it after these 2 hearings.
No,
but
just promise this is part 1. There's going to be part 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But the hearing that I watched on the plane that had nothing to do with plane crashes was fascinating. It was about insurance companies and homeowners insurance and the threat to the entire financial system. And so I have a whole episode out of that. So Claire and I are going to whip that together as fast as we can next week. And then I'll get back to this Boeing disaster that just keeps growing on me. But yeah, so I will have something next week. But right now, feed is still quiet.
For now.
Yeah, it's about Claire and I are working on now 3 to 4 episodes at once. So once I start putting them out, they're going to come out pretty quick. But yeah, this Boeing thing is just, there's so much news about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, everybody go ahead and listen. Until then, this is your old pal, Justin Robert Young, for Jen Briney and Andrew Heaton, reminding you that we're not